All right, taking a look at the main card for UFC Vegas 46. Finally, the wait is over. This 4-week break is finally coming to a close. It feels like it's been about 4 months, not 4 weeks. I mean, the holidays is just really a brutal time now since they don't do end of the year events like they used to. So, man, it just feels like a long drought between waiting for mixed martial arts action to come back. And especially after closing out 2021, which was my first year of betting. It was incredible. It was a profitable year. I had action at every single UFC event and select PFL and Bellator pay-per-views as well. So to be able to have a lot of betting action and make mostly smart bets my first year, some not so smart degenerate action on there too, but to come out 17 units ahead, I was pretty happy with for kind of learning on the job, especially the first half of the year with mixing in MMA knowledge that I have. I've been watching this my entire life, quite literally, but learning the betting is a whole different game. So it was fun to jump in and be a part of the community and, just actually have some success the first year too. So that was nice. So we got some bankroll to work with rolling into 2022, starting with Las Vegas 46, Calvin Kattar versus Giga Chikadze. And the last time that we saw Calvin Keator was the first event of last year's card too. So it's been a whole year, and he took that ass whooping against Max Holloway, that life-changing, record-setting beating against Max Holloway. And right off the bat, we're gonna see a little bit of a recency bias for and against both of the guys here. We're expecting that. The line's a little bit inflated in my opinion, but that's because Giga's been on a huge win streak and now finished his last 3 fights, whereas Keator's coming off of a very impressive beat down at the hands of Max Holloway. So we're going to see kind of an underappreciated Calvin Keator and maybe a bit of an overappreciated Giga Chikadze as far as the value goes. So right now it's all the way inflated to minus 235. I've even seen up to minus 250 favorite for Giga Chikadze with a plus 200 roundabout underdog price on Calvin Keator. So I am going to be on the Giga Chikadze side, especially after his last fight against Edson Barbosa, who's always been one of my favorite guys, even when he fought at lightweight. He's a very tough test for a guy like Giga Chikadze. So for him to come out and get the better of him striking-wise, and even show competency on the ground, offensively and defensively, against a black belt like Edson Barbosa was very, very impressive. He was advancing on the ground, getting top control, and actually threatening with submissions too, which I found pretty crazy. Whether that was an attempt to end the fight or just to get a better position, he had some clean strikes down the middle, clean straight punches on the middle that he didn't rush the pace at all. He didn't rush the finish. He had measured shots the entire way through, so that was very, very impressive. To see the power not only on a guy like Giga Chikadze early, but then to see it finish late in round 3, that's something I usually like to look for if I'm betting for a guy, and especially in a fight against a guy like Calvin Keator, who's super, super tough, never been knocked down in 27 pro fights. So the experience edge goes a little bit to Calvin Keator as far as MMA fights. He's had 27 pro fights versus Giga Chikadze's 16. But Giga Chikadze, international professional kickboxer, over probably about 50 bouts, I want to say, kickboxing-wise. So he's no stranger to having the pressure on him in a combat sport. So I think the experience, even though pro MMA fights goes to Calvin Keator, I think the experience is kind of nullified between the both of them. They have just about the same amount of UFC experience, 9 fights for Keator, 8 for Giga Chikadze. So a little bit more cage time for Keator, but I think the experience is a little bit of a tie there. Their age, a little bit of a tie. Obviously, both 33 years old. Height-wise, more measurables that look very similar. 6 foot even for Giga, 5'11" for Keator, and a slight 2-inch reach advantage for Giga Chikadze, which I think will really be a big difference maker there. He's going to have that reach advantage that will allow him to use some of those flashier strikes. He uses that teep kick up the middle. He uses it, even goes to the face sometimes with that front kick. I just think that the range control is going to be something that Giga is going to master here. And if Keator's going to have an opportunity to win this fight, he's going to have to nullify that by making this ugly, keeping the fight close, cutting off the cage. And I really think he's going to struggle to do that against Giga Chikadze. I could see this getting better for Keator down the stretch, potentially, if Giga were to slow down and Keator could take over. But I really don't see that happening. I think that the last fight really showed the improvements that Giga's made, and I think he's better just about everywhere in this fight. I know Keator's got kind of a wrestling background, but we're not going to see that be an issue here, I don't think. So you don't see many offensive grappling stats for Calvin Keator. Not a great takedown percentage, and both of these guys have very, very amazing takedown defense numbers. I mean, pushing 90% for Keator and pushing 70% takedown defense for Giga Chikadze. So I think this will be a stand-up war, and I think Giga's going to dominate it. So taking a look at the numbers, I mean, again, the money line is not going to be that much value to be extracted out of Giga Chikadze. And I'm not rushing to go bet Calvin Keator as an underdog either, obviously. But just because I was bored during the holidays and I just couldn't help myself, I decided to get a buy low spot on Giga Chikadze. I got him right around, I think, minus 215. I got a couple units in the money line there. I have not bet this yet, but now that these props are out, I do like the overs. The over 2.5 in this fight was about minus 180, minus 170 when I last saw it. I like that option just because Calvin Keator is super tough. Obviously never been knocked down in his 27 pro fights. We saw the beating he took against Holloway and stayed standing. So there's a good chance that this goes over into the later rounds at least. So the over 1.5, the over 2.5. If you're feeling ballsy, the over 4.5. Let me see what the numbers on that one is. Fight goes to decision. Let's see here. Fight goes to decision. I'm seeing plus 130, plus 140. So yeah, even as high as plus 160, just looking at best fight odds. That might actually be playable. Just the way, especially with the anomaly of 5-round fights in the main event spot going the distance. There's been a crazy amount of those happening. I could see that happening just because both guys are pretty tough. So those I like. I like the overs. So especially the over 2.5, right around the minus 160. I think there's value there, and it's very likely to happen that way. So I'd go for the over 2.5, and I think the Giga money line is kind of inflated at this point, so I probably wouldn't go that route. If anything, Giga by decision is probably something around like plus 275, plus 300. Let me find it. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm seeing a plus 300 on that. So, and Keator by decision plus 550. Again, that would be a stretch. If you're gonna call, since I think Giga's gonna win, I could kind of change that line from a minus 250 to a plus 300. I might go that route, but I would just put a sprinkle on that if anything. I'd say either the plus 2.5. The over 2.5 or Giga by money line. So that's what I'm feeling on this one. I think we were supposed to have Muslim Salikov versus Michelle Pereira as the co-main event for this fight, which would have been infinitely more exciting. But since that fight fizzled out, we now have what is this? I mean, this is basically a contenders match in some way. We're just basically seeing the top of the division and who's going to be next for Shevchenko, and two women that have not only already faced Shevchenko and lost to her, but two women that have fought each other a few years ago. So that's probably why I'm not the most excited to watch this fight. Not only is it women's flyweight in a stalemate division, but the fact of the matter is we've seen these two fight each other before in the not most exciting fight, and we've seen them both take on the current champion before. So all around, we're just leading up to see rematches, and I don't see this fight going very much different than the first time they fought, which was all the way back at the end of 2019, where Katlyn Chookagian got a majority decision. No, I'm sorry, unanimous decision, but it was 29-28. So I think it might even be more one-sided this time. I just think that Katlyn Chookagian, if any of these two fighters, has seemed to come into her own a little bit more as far as not looking so incredibly awkward. She is a longer fighter, which is going to give Jennifer Maia a lot of difficulty here. Just like the first fight, she's 5'9" versus Maia's 5'4" with a 4-inch reach advantage for Chookagian. Both the same age, 33, and both orthodox fighters. I just see Katlyn Chookagian taking this fight with just, she's always the busier fighter, and on average in the UFC, she is the more busier fighter. Almost 13 significant strikes attempted per minute versus Maia under 10 per minute. So the striking accuracy is about the same, but Jennifer Maia just does not have the output or the attempted output of Katlyn Chookagian. And in this fight, she won't even have the ability to really reach her opponent with much success. So, you know, Jennifer Maia, her wrestling is kind of a little bit overstated just because she has that thing that she can boast on over other women in the division is that she actually got one round against the current champion, Shevchenko, by, you know, just getting that control time for the second round of their fight. Whereas, you know, so if there is an advantage she has, she actually got a round on the champion, whereas the champion just steamrolled through Chookagian within 3 rounds. So she has that, but I don't think it's going to help her in this fight. That might be her only advantage. Other advantages for Maia, her pro MMA career is a bit longer by 7 fights, 27 fights for Jennifer Maia versus the 20 fights of Chookagian. But even that's not really an advantage. Katlyn Chookagian's got almost double the amount of UFC fights, and her career has just been spent fighting better opponents than Jennifer Maia. So I'd say experience edge, even with less fights, does go to Chookagian. So just physical advantages, output advantages, experience and level of opponent advantages for Katlyn Chookagian, and she already has a win over this opponent, so I don't see how I could possibly back Jennifer Maia as an underdog here, especially since the numbers on the betting lines just don't support it either. We got minus 170 to minus 185 I'm seeing for Katlyn Chookagian at this time, and plus about 150 underdog for Maia. So it's just not a juicy enough number to even take a stab on the underdog, even if you wanted to play the contrarian here. And I don't see why you would even want to bet the overs. They're so overinflated for this fight since everybody figures it's going to go to decision. And so that's not even an option. Betting Katlyn on the money line is just way too steep of a price for her. If you're going to have to bet this fight at all, you'd have to bet Chookagian by decision, which is still only about minus 110. So you're still not getting plus money on a decision prop. So I don't possibly see myself betting on this fight, and I just don't see any value really anywhere for any of the props either. So it's a pass for me, but I'm taking Chookagian to win by decision. So we're going from a fight that I'm not that excited to watch in the co-main event to now a fight that I'm extremely excited to watch, which is Brandon Royval versus Rogerio Bontorin. I'm a huge Brandon Royval fan, and I think a lot of people were really on that hype train when he was looking to be the next big thing at men's flyweight. And, I mean, he's on a 2-fight skid here, but they're against game opponents, the current champion, Moreno, and a very, very capable contender, Alexander Pantoja. And looking at the measurables between these two men, they're both 29 years of age. Brandon Royval will be the bigger man stature-wise, 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. Now, Tapology's got different measurements than what's on the UFC website. The UFC website has his reach advantage to be 3.5 inches of reach over Rogerio Bontorin. So that seems probably more accurate since the height discrepancy is so large. Even though Bontorin did fight up a weight class in his last fight, he was filling in for Alexander Perez on short notice against Matt Schnell. And he actually failed to even make weight at 135. He missed weight by a couple pounds. It even got popped by USADA for a banned diuretic, which kind of flew under the radar. That wasn't really made public a whole lot. But he blamed a tainted supplement for it and got off with, I think, just normal in-between fight suspension. It was like maybe 3 months or something. So he had trouble and clearly was not ready to make weight for that fight. Still got the victory. But yeah, so I want to look out for that, see him on the scale. And I think it's going to be, either way, it'll be kind of a disadvantage for him because he's struggling to make weight, only still to be the smaller man. You know, no matter what, stature-wise, he'll be smaller. So that's not great. Number of pro fights is about the same for these guys, 18 Royval, 21 for Bontorin. And they have almost the same number of UFC fights, 4 versus 6. So Experience-wise, both kind of even there. I just think Royval is just a little bit better everywhere in this fight. His striking is looking superb. He's got a lot of knockdowns per 15 minutes. You know, 1 knockdown per 15 minutes is incredible for men's flyweight. He's just a busier man striking-wise as Royval, attempting a lot more strikes per minute. Both guys usually end up on the ground at some point in their fights just because I think a lot of people are taking Royval down to get away from the striking advantage that he often has, which has led to a lot of submission wins. So looking at some of the odds here, we're looking at -160 in the money line for Royval, which I think there's actually still some value on Royval in that. I took a stab at Royval, I think 1.5 units on the money line. The comeback is +140 for the underdog Bontorin. Again, I think there's better underdog spots in the card than the pick him in this fight, even if you were on that side. I think there's value in Royval. I think he's getting underappreciated by the market here just because he's on a 2-fight skid. But again, it's losses to great opponents, so I don't really fault him for that. And I think those are 2 very, very forgivable losses against Pantoja and now the current champion Moreno. So I'm going to take Brandon Royval. I think even if Bontorin is successful, which he probably will be successful in taking down Brandon Royval, I think Royval has the tools to scramble to his feet or at least transition to a top position and win minutes on the ground and on the feet if he wants to constantly make Bontorin work and stand back up if he's unsuccessful in taking him down and holding him there. So that's how I see this fight playing out. I would say probably I'd lean towards Royval by decision. Now, interestingly enough, for a men's flyweight fight, you're getting plus money on the over in this fight, which is very, very rare. So if you were to be on my side, I'm predicting that he wins by decision. I think that you could kind of get a really nice opportunity at a men's flyweight to get plus money on the over, which usually men's flyweight fights do go over. But I'm not trying to get cute with this. I have got a lot of confidence in Royval's ability to win, so I'm just betting the money line. But that is a good opportunity, I see, to bet the over in this fight, which seems a little bit risky just because, of course, on paper, you see a lot of finishes from Royval. You know, he's got a lot of potential to hook up subs, but I think Bontorin is usually very competent on the ground, too competent to get caught in something like rushing in and getting his neck caught in a guillotine. He does have 1 submission loss to an Asian fighter named Tanaka earlier in his career, but if you watch that fight, he kind of got tired and just kind of got caught by the superior wrestling and grappling of this Tanaka that gave him his one and only submission loss. He got caught in a rear naked choke that he tried to get out of by slamming to his back, and it just made the choke deeper and he had to tap to it. But it's his sole submission loss. I'd be surprised if that happens in this fight, but I'm just going to stick with the money line. So give me Royval by decision is my prediction. Royval and the money line is my bet. Okay, another fight that I should not be as excited for as I am, but I just love these sloppy, low-level punching bag heavyweight fights. We got Jake Collier versus Chase Sherman. The measurables are pretty close, once again, for these two guys. Both about the same age, 33 for Collier, 32 for Sherman. 6'3" Collier, Chase Sherman, 6'4", reaches the same. And both guys are about the same size now on paper, but Chase Sherman is the natural heavyweight. Jake Collier his career started middleweight, and he slowly ballooned up to 205, and now all the way up to, he just said screw dieting, and now he's just a big sloppy heavyweight. So a should-be middleweight up at heavyweight. Never really a good way to approach it when a lot of these heavyweights like Chase Sherman are just naturally bigger framed guys. So already a disadvantage for Jake Collier, and he got welcomed into the heavyweight division the hard way against Tom Aspinall, who is the next big thing at heavyweight, it looks like. So that really wasn't a great way to start. But I mean, that's just typically what these two guys are to the UFC. It seems like they are just the jobbers that come in and make prospects look good. That was the whole first part of Chase Sherman's first stint in the UFC. This is his second stint in the UFC. His first stint, I mean, he's taken on guys like Walt Harris, like Augusto Sakai, Shamil Abdurakhimov, I believe he fought. So he has faced the better level of competition, not often winning these fights. But he has had 10 UFC fights combined in his current stint and his last stint in the UFC. Jake Collier has had 9 fights, again, across 3 different weight classes. And now he's ended up at heavyweight. So both guys now, I mean, they're not coming off of any impressive wins. They're both coming off of a loss. But especially, I'm not going to count the win over John Vellante as anything to write home about, even though he did win that at the heavyweight division. So, so far he is 1-2 in the heavyweight division is Jake Collier. But again, he's not the busier guy. Chase Sherman is technically the busier guy as far as significant strikes attempted in the cage. So we can give that to Chase Sherman. If we're going to try to pick a winner here, Chase Sherman has better finishing stats. He has finished 93% of his fights. He has finished by knockout. So he's got that going for him. Jake Collier has been known to be finished by strikes. So there's a clear opportunity for this fight to be finished by Chase Sherman by knockout. Now, on the opposite side of the coin as well, Chase Sherman has horrible striking defense. Both guys have horrible striking defense, but I mean, I'm going to hold that a little bit more against Chase Sherman since he is competing at heavyweight. You know, I mean, these guys aren't really throwing that many strikes, and the few that they are landing at will on Chase Sherman. So his significant strike defense is so poor that you can tell he basically has no head movement. He's not a very fast guy. Neither of these two are very, very fast guys. You would expect that Jake Collier might be the faster guy coming up from middleweight, but I don't even see a clear speed advantage for either guy. It's going to be a sloppy stand-up war. There aren't many grappling stats to really go off of to think that this might take place in the ground. I mean, both guys have pretty non-existent stats as far as the grappling here. So, if they do get tired, maybe they end up on the ground. I could see that happening. But I don't know. I just don't see any way you can bet this fight with any sort of confidence. I will take Chase Sherman to win. He's currently sitting at just slight underdog price, which I find that's not enough for me to take a stab on it. I'm not going to start as much as I want to. As much as I want to take a stab on the Chase Sherman by knockout prop at plus money, I'm not going to do it because even though I think it's likely, I'm not going to start off my betting career in 2022 sweating out a fight of Jake Collier and Chase Sherman. I just won't do it. And hopefully I can withstand any sort of urges to do that in the next few days, but I just really don't want to have action on this fight. So no matter what they dangle in front of me on the bookies, I'm just not going to do it. So I'm going to pass on this fight, but I will take Chase Sherman by knockout as my prediction. All right, and finally, here's the fight that'll kick off the main card. I think it was on the prelims, but now promoted just due to the co-main event falling apart. So on the main card is Bill Algeo versus Joanderson Brito. And Brito's making his debut, coming off of the Contender Series where he got a contract. He had a pretty easy fight in that he won a technical decision after a bad eye poke on, who was his opponent? It was Diego Lopez. And he pretty much just, he walked through him in that fight. He claims to be 26 years old. I mean, all of the pictures and even just the wear and tear on his face, he just looks a lot older than 26 years old. But we'll go with that. And Bill Algeo is only 32 at this point. Bill Algeo, the bigger guy frame-wise. The reach is about the same, only 1 inch reach advantage for Bill Algeo, even though he is 6 foot tall compared to Brito's 5'8". So big featherweight in Bill Algeo, and he's already been in the UFC for 4 fights now. And he's not had an easy time. He's fought tough guys like Spike Carlisle. He has a win over. He just recently lost to Ricardo Ramos, and he beat Ricardo No, I'm sorry, he lost to Ricardo Ramos in his debut, and just now lost again to Ricardo Ramos. But I mean, that was a tough fight. So I feel like he's learning a lot on the job as Bill Algeo, and I'm a big fan of the guy. I think he's got potential. You can see him kind of make small improvements fight to fight, and he just really never stops working, is what I like about him. He gets taken down a lot. He's been taken down a lot in his career so far, but always managing to scramble and make his opponent work, which I think is going to be an issue for somebody like Joanderson Brito, who is very athletic guy is Brito. I've watched a lot of his fights, and I was preparing to handicap the Contender Series bout that he had. I watched a lot of his regional scene fights, and he's kind of like hit or miss with how his cardio looks. He's such an explosive guy that I feel like sometimes he kind of fights in bursts that way, like he's kind of sprinting rather than like a constant flow of making his opponent work the way that more of a savvy, more experienced guy like Bill Algeo, I think, is going to have more constant pressure. And the numbers support that. Bill Algeo actually is the busier fighter striking-wise by a decent margin. So I expect him to be busier on the feet. I expect Brito to exploit the poor takedown defense of Bill Algeo. Bill Algeo is taken down almost that well. Like every other takedown his opponent attempts on him, they will be successful. Now, they can't always hold him down. He's not really that often controlled, but he is still getting those points scored against him with that poor takedown defense. And I think Brito is going to exploit that. But I think through doing that, my prediction is that Brito's cardio might be an issue. He might get exposed here, trying to go for the obvious low-hanging fruit, which is taking down Bill Algeo. A great game plan nonetheless, but I think that Bill Algeo is going to make him work a little bit more than he's ever had to work before against some of these guys that have folded on the regional scene under the explosive pressure of Brito. So I don't think Bill Algeo is going to go anywhere. I think he's going to use his veteran savvy that he's accumulated so far with just being a more experienced guy in the UFC. And I'm going to favor the experience edge of Bill Algeo and his ability to outlast Brito and win a clear-cut decision once Brito gets tired in the later rounds. So, again, there's not a whole lot of data to go off. A lot of this is speculation, I'll admit. But, again, for that reason, that's just not going to be a fight that I'm going to bet on. It's close to a pick'em fight. I think the last I checked it was minus 125 favorite for Brito, probably just due to his impressive win streak that he's on, and plus 105 for Bill Algeo, the underdog, was the last that I saw. That might have changed, but it's still about pick'em price. So, again, that could be a good underdog spot, as I'm the type of handicapper that favors experience in a fight, especially fading some of these guys that are making a big jump from the Contender Series to the UFC level competition. But it's just not a bet that I'm going to make. I don't think there's a lot of data, and I'd rather watch this fight play out and see what we're getting in Brito in his debut before I bet against him. So my prediction will be Algeo. I think Algeo by decision, but it's a pass betting-wise for me.